All right, everybody, it is 4 after, and I have clicked go live. So I'd like to say good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending our Education and Communications Subcommittee meeting. And tonight we're going to go over our priority areas. I don't think that we have enough people to accept our minutes from the last couple meetings. So we'll have to wait until next time to formalize those. However, they are done. Big shout out to Kenny for doing that for us. So unless you guys have anything that you'd like to bring up or anything you'd like to touch base on before we dive into this, I'll share my screen.
Nothing from me.
All right, so like I said, we're going to go over our priority areas this evening. I think first and foremost, it's kind of imperative that we understand the terminology behind our plan. First, we have what we're calling priority areas, which are those general topic areas that were assigned to all the subcommittees. So for instance, public engagement, city practices, housing and livability, public service, economic empowerment, and community building and inclusion. Obviously, we have been assigned public engagement, community building, and inclusion. What's on the table for us and what we need to accomplish is defining our aspirational goals. Aspirational goals are the subheadings of priority areas in the Beaverton model. They're more visionary statements or general policy guidance for the city. In the weeks to come, we're going to be going over our indicators as well, but that is not on the agenda for this evening. To be specific, indicators are the subheadings of the aspirational goals. So they're the subheadings of the subheadings. They are key metrics or outcomes that indicate progress. They can be specific or they can be broad, but it's meant to show if we are accomplishing our goals or not. So our due dates for moving forward, our last subcommittee meeting, we discussed our aspirational goals a bit. Kofi went over a few things that we had talked about, but we didn't go into great detail because attendance was light. And then our upcoming meeting, we have to present our aspirational goals to the task force for discussion. And then at the next meeting, we're going to adopt them formally. So it's really important that tonight, we get a real grasp on where we want to go moving forward so that we can get some feedback from the task force at large. So for reference, this is what Beaverton's model looks like. We've all read through this in preparation. They have the priority areas, so public engagement, city practices, but as you can see, they have the aspirational goals layered underneath them. So for public engagement, communications, outreach and engagement, youth engagement, leadership development, and reflective government. And they have just a few sentences about what that means within their community. Later on in the model, they then break it down to key indicators. So one of the indicators that they're being successful is city marketing materials depicting people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds, so whether or not the city is doing that, and so on. So that's kind of the general idea of the flow of the framework that we're trying to put together as a city. And I just wanted to provide that context for you so that when I throw out the term aspirational goal, you don't throw your hands up in the air and say, well, what does that mean? Any questions? So first, let's take a look at public engagement. Our first priority area is communications and outreach. So to accomplish that, we need to continually understand our community diversity, promote a welcoming environment, and build relationships and trust. These are not indicators. They are more so just general themes or ideas in which what communications and outreach means within the context of Dublin. What are your perspectives on these bullet points within communications and outreach?
It looks pretty fine to me. No comments on my end.
Yeah, I think it looks good too, and it's like broad enough that we can expand on it if we need to.
Right, and we will have the ability to with those indicators. So next would be leadership development, increase overall understanding of Dublin government and community. So that is the aspirational goal, is developing leadership and increasing an understanding of local government. So some of the key factors within that are recruiting diversity into Leadership Dublin, recruiting and welcoming diversity into Citizen U, the Dublin Police Academy, and Washington Township. In our original proposal, we had cultural awareness training and implicit bias training as well. Lindsay and I had a conversation about it the other day. I highlighted these red because I don't think they necessarily fit in here. They may, but I feel like those trainings are referencing internal trainings to our organization as the city, which is part of a different subcommittee. So I'm not sure if that's really within our purview, but I could also see, if we're talking about council having cultural awareness training or implicit bias training or any other public representative body. So do you think this priority area is one that fits within public engagement? Do you think leadership development should be within public engagement?
I think it definitely fits.
And would you say that the bullet points that are listed are some of the goals that would be specific to Leadership Dublin within, I'm sorry, leadership development within the city of Dublin? Is this relevant to us from your perspective as community members?
I think it's relevant, so I think we should keep it, maybe.
Great.
I think
And lastly,
the second bulletin where it talks about recruiting and trying to get people more exposure into Citizen University and those other two, I think that's great to increase exposure for those activities.
absolutely. So when I read through this the other day with Lindsay, I was a little confused as to the Dublin Police Academy and the Washington Township Fire Academy. But after speaking with Dana and talking internally, I believe those are the citizen police academies and the citizen fire academies rather than the official positions. Now, obviously, the city has a vested interest in making sure that its police force is representative. However, this bullet is specifically speaking to those training opportunities for residents to get involved within the city and making sure that there is diversity within participation. So next is reflective government and city practices, specifically increasing awareness and promoting diverse elected and appointed officials. The gist of this is create an understanding and interest in local government among diverse members of the community. As you can probably tell just by looking at our boards and commissions, we're not incredibly diverse. So I think this is specifically speaking to those initiatives.
Yeah, one thing I like about that is it talks about increasing the interest amongst diverse citizens. I think that's very crucial.
I think it ties into leadership development well, but I do think it's worth separating it out and being explicit that this is something we need to do. Do you have any other ideas, any other sub-bullets, any other contextual pieces for that reflective government piece or public engagement in general? Is there anything else the city can do? Are there any goals that the city should have in regards to public engagement efforts with diversity, equity, and inclusion in mind?
I would add for the first section under communications and outreach, those 3 bullet points they're great. It's just they're very vague, and it's easy to sort of say you're doing it without really focusing on it. I feel like that section for those three, some type of commitment should be mentioned, like the city should commit to understand our diverse community by doing this, this, and that, or the city should promote a welcoming environment by doing this, this, and that. I just felt like those three, it's too easy to say you're doing it without actually doing it.
Sure, absolutely. I completely agree with you. The only thing that I would say is that I think that's where the indicators come in. I think that's where in our next step, we're going to have achievable goals that we call on the city to accomplish. So these bullet points are kind of setting the parameters for which those indicators will be layered within. So I think that you hit the nail on the head. We're just a step too early to do that. But do you think that these are targetable goals that we could then eventually build indicators into? Or do we need to get more specific with the language to even take that step to require the city to do certain things?
And Kofi, just to jump in here, because Kirby and I talked about this the other day, you know, the sub bullet is kind of the next step. But if you have things that you want to say right now, if it's coming to the top of your head, I think it's definitely worth getting down on paper. So if you want to do that now, we can. Just understand that that's sort of our next benchmark. So now we're just getting this basic framework together, and then the next step is going to be, here are our measurable indicators.
But if a
That
light
sounds
bulb goes off, make sure you share because we need those insights.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll have something ready for when we're ready for that part. Nothing I have right now. I do have something though for leadership and development. The second bulletin, the recruit Citizen U Dublin Police Academy, Washington Township. It just feels really out of place. Looking at that one with everything we're talking about, I'm just wondering if that specific one, if that is us, if you understand what I'm saying.
So are you saying that it doesn't necessarily fit within public engagement, or that it isn't relevant to begin with?
I feel like it's not relevant to what we're talking about at this moment.
Sammy, how do you feel about that?
Did he say the second bullet point or the part in
Yes,
red?
recruit and welcome diversity into Citizen University, Citizen Dublin Police Academy, and the Citizen Fire Academy.
I think we're talking about like increased understanding of the government and like community. I feel like those could be helpful towards that goal. Because like Citizen University like shows like the different like I don't know parts of the government and how they function from what I understand.
But when we talk about those three listed, it feels out of place to put that into leadership. I feel like that's something that should be put or would fit better in a topic about safety.
What do you think about moving it to reflective government and city practices? If our goal is to increase awareness and promote diverse elected and appointed persons, Citizen U is a great opportunity to understand what the city does and how we do it. And it could be a first step for establishing a pipeline for diverse talent to get involved or interested in city practices.
Yeah, now that sounds good. I feel like moving that to reflective government and city practices would be better than having that under leadership development. Looking at that, it just looks it looks like it doesn't fit as well in leadership development.
Sure,
Yeah, I agree with that.
it's fair. It's absolutely
So
fair.
I'm gonna try to share this screen. Is that okay, Kirby?
Yeah. I will stop sharing and then see if this works.
All right, can you guys see the screen there?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to take this bullet and move it to reflective government and city practices and recruit and welcome diversity into Citizen University, the Dublin Citizens Police Academy, which is accepting applications right now. Please tell your friends. And the Washington Township, and I believe that's Citizens Fire Academy as well. So those three things are sort of like you said, Kirby could be a good step for that. Anything else while I'm editing?
So I have one more conversation point that I'd like to hit on. Can I take, if I do this, will I just steal sharing privileges from you?
That's
Did it
fine.
work?
I was done. I also I just wanted to point out how I meshed you guys' name together and said Kobe. That's
Rest
your
in
name from
peace.
now on.
Rest in peace.
It's too soon.
Very, very soon. I still cannot believe it. Anyway, different topic for a different day. So we're taking out recruiting and welcome diversity from leadership development. And cultural awareness training and implicit bias training is it's kind of on the edge there. I don't think it necessarily fits within leadership development. That sounds more like community building, might be some of those training exercises that we had talked about and that we will talk about on the next slide. So what are some other ways that the city can promote leadership development, even in communities of diversity? How can the city, what are some things that the city can do to help there? I'm thinking about community leaders, like building community leaders and building leadership within communities.
I would just say off the top of my head, one easy way is just somehow increasing awareness of open positions when it comes to membership, like the task force. There could be a lot of boards that people just somehow aren't aware of that they could be interested in. So that is one great way to build leadership right there.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking, the city can get creative with ways to engage community leaders. They don't have to hold a formal elected position to inform the city as to what their community needs are. But also they could be formal and that could be explicit. So I think that's a good point, Kofi.
Yeah, I
So
think that's great. And something for everyone to think about for the next step is the indicators. How do we do that? What are our goals for that?
All right, so moving on, unless anybody has any other brilliant ideas regarding public engagement. So next we have community building and inclusion. So taking Kofi's comments at our last meeting into consideration, we had promote Dublin as an inclusive city. He said first we need to become an inclusive city. So I phrased it as improve Dublin's inclusivity as a community. How do you guys feel about that language? Is it strong enough?
Could we add commit to improve Dublin's inclusivity?
Sure, absolutely. And within this bullet point is kind of where the action items that we had spoken about before come into play. So specifically, establishing an educational speaker series for the general public, integrating cultural awareness celebration in the city events, hosting diversity town halls with community leaders. So I like committing to improve Dublin's inclusivity as a community. And these sub bullets, I think that, you know, they add context to what improving Dublin's inclusivity means. But I think that they can also be indicators. Maybe specifically hosting a certain amount of town halls a year, maybe one check-in with each major demographic community. Integrating cultural awareness, having a certain number of tents at the Dublin Irish Festival, or a certain number of celebrations outside of our typical events. Those are all indicators that we can hit on, that we can expand on this. And then I have celebrate Dublin's diversity. This was not a aspirational goal before I threw it in there. But I put underneath it recognizing, supporting, and promoting cultural, race, religion, LGBTQ plus new immigrant diversity within the community. So promoting their presence, celebrating their presence, and making sure that, you know, tying back to that first bullet point, that we're improving the inclusivity of the community. I also put here to acknowledge diversity in public places and public spaces and communication material, which we had talked about before, specifically with like public art and other outward facing media content. What do you think of the language of celebrate Dublin's diversity? Again, is it strong enough?
I would, instead of saying celebrate, what is everyone's thoughts on saying promote Dublin's diversity? So, for example, if we were to put a community's poster up in the rec center, that's not just celebrating, but it's promoting, saying, hey, this is a community, a group of people we have within our city, and like you can check out some more information about us. I feel like promote Dublin's diversity would be better, because there's not a lot of groups that people are aware of in Dublin. So that's how I feel about that. And also, when you're promoting something, it's also celebrating.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think celebrate was like the best word. I think promote would be a better fit.
I have to agree. I think that promote is much more inclusive rather than celebrate. Celebrate makes it seem like that diversity is like a sidebar to the community, whereas promote is, this is who we are, and this is the community. So thank you. I think you're absolutely right. Are there any other subheadings in promoting Dublin's diversity? Are there any other goals or things that the city can do to promote Dublin's diversity? Well, that's okay, because we'll get there with the indicators. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we've got a core as to what our direction is. So do you all feel comfortable with the priority areas that we've put together. Very quickly, we'll recap. We've got communications and outreach, focusing on understanding the community's diversity, promoting welcoming environment, building relationships, leadership development, and developing an understanding of Dublin government and community, reflective government and city practices, promoting diverse elected and appointed persons, and specifically recruiting them. We have committing to improving Dublin's inclusivity as a community, which has to do with training exercises and how we engage with the community to improve our inclusivity, and then promoting Dublin's diversity, whether it be through public art, recognizing and supporting certain communities, or integrating cultural awareness at city events. Are those priority areas around what you guys were thinking for what public engagement and community building mean?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that is everything that I wanted to hit on this evening. I wanted to make sure that you guys had an opportunity to sink your teeth into those key priority areas, and then I get your blessing on those. I will put them specifically within little bullets with a little blurb as to what each one means, and send it to you so that you can have it ready for the next task force meeting. Sammy or Kofi, would one of you like to volunteer or report out to the task force at large?
I don't have a problem doing it unless Sammy, you want to do it. I can do it.
I think you should do it.
All right. Well, I will send out that PowerPoint to to everybody. I will also throw in a Word document with just a brief little blurb about each key priority area or aspirational goal, so that you have that ready for our next meeting. And you don't have to use the specific language that I use. It's just so it's a cheat sheet for you. Is there anything that you guys wanted to talk about? You guys wanted to touch on?
Just to clarify, so our next subcommittee meeting will be about the priority areas, like how we'll accomplish each bulletin.
Yes. And certain things that certain metrics that you would like the city to track to ensure that they are holding up their end of the bargain in their commitments that you lay out.
And then are we still doing this meeting time, or are we still going to try and play around? Or
Have you guys talked to anybody? Do you know what the issue was, either with this meeting time or the other meeting time?
I think for the youth members in this committee, this week's like spring break for Dublin, so maybe that's why they didn't come, just like for this week.
Sure.
that explains it.
What works best for you two?
For me, at any time, every day, anytime after 4, it's fine. Tuesdays and Thursdays are the best for me.
Okay, so you like this meeting time that we're at right now compared to the last one?
This meeting time and the last one were fine with me.
Okay. Maybe I'll send out another survey. I'm trying to get everybody here. It's rather difficult. So I'll try again. I'll shoot out an email. I'll bug everybody again. Maybe I'll send out another survey to make sure that we try to get people here. If you guys could do me a favor, if you guys have conversations with any of the other subcommittee members, to let them know that I'm willing to work out a time that works best for everybody. And then I'm here for you guys.
Sounds good.
Kenny, any thoughts about the content or scheduling or whatever you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think all the priority areas discussed tonight went very well. I think there's some great content there. I would also say to continue to think about other ideas that could come up between now and the next subcommittee meeting. I think those those would be good, just to bring up at the next meeting for other members to provide feedback.
Thank you. Lindsay, do you have anything?
No, I agree. Really good progress tonight. And I think this is a good step just for everyone to start thinking about those key indicators, because as Kofi mentioned, this is really broad. These are aspirational goals as they are intended to be, but we need to get down to, I don't know if we're thinking 3 bullets under each bullet of like, here's how we're going to do this and how we're going to accomplish it, and how we're going to, at the end of the year or whatever, say, we met this goal. So I think it'll be important for us all to, oh, look, I'm glad I stretched long enough for Vincent to join us. But yeah, if everyone
apologies.
Hello, welcome.
How are you doing?
Doing well. Glad you could join us.
Sorry. Yeah, just go ahead. I was listening.
Oh, okay. I was just wrapping up a sentence anyway, but and then I'm not sure, Kirby, if there are in the Beaverton plan, some indicators that everyone could reference and say, oh, I like that, because sometimes we do want to recreate the wheel, but sometimes we don't need to. So if everybody wants to refer to that plan and just kind of maybe get some ideas and see how we can adapt that for Dublin, I think that would be a good thing to do between now and the next subcommittee meeting.
Thank you for bringing that up, Lindsay. There are absolutely indicators for every single priority area that Beaverton had. And it may provide some inspiration for you, for the subcommittee and for me, realistically, over the next couple of weeks. So if you guys need me to send that Beaverton model out again, I can, but let's take a look at that to try to spur our thinking for the next meeting. Well, so we'll have our next meeting in 3 weeks. Vincent, unfortunately, you missed out on our riveting content for the evening. We ran through all of our priority areas. I sent our priority areas via email. I'll follow up with
Okay.
you. And if you have any insights, if you want to read through them real quick and send me any edits that you may have via email, I can definitely incorporate those.
Okay, great. Yeah, that would be great. I can do that.
Okay.
Sorry for missing out of the main part of the meeting, but I'm glad I can see all of you guys. Thank you so much for being responsible and being contributing to this. And I will do better next time.
No worries, Vincent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Barring anything else, I guess we're adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice
Well, nice evening. Good night. Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Thanks, Kenny.